Neoconservatives have a lengthy history of infiltration. They have done it to the media, both political parties. They have infiltrated the financial institutions, the think tanks, the super PACs, and the nonprofits. These individuals are focused on achieving an objective, and that is a new world order. They work in stealth. They are barely visible on the surface, but when one goes deeper into their network, one begins to understand that a remnant of a shadowed government is lurking, always ready to seize upon the moment. One of my biggest concerns with Donald Trump is that he will allow the neoconservative shadow government to infiltrate his ranks. Already, he is considering many of them for high-ranking positions. John Bolton is a well-known neocon and former member of George W. Bush's cabinet. Stephen Hadley is a high-ranking official of the Council on Foreign Relations and is being considered for Defense Secretary. Stephen Mnuchin, a name that has been floated around for Treasury Secretary, is a former top-ranking Goldman Sachs official. Robert E. Grady, an investment venture capitalist and member of the Council on Foreign Relations, is being considered for Interior Secretary. Louis Eisenberg is being considered for Commerce Secretary. He is a former top official at Goldman Sachs. And Trump may appoint James Connaughton for a position as Energy Secretary. He is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. There is a danger that half of Trump's cabinet could turn out to be neocons. Perhaps this is the reason why we just received a warning from Ron Paul that the neoconservatives might rear their ugly face in a Trump administration.
Much to talk about. One of my major concerns when it comes to Trump's foreign policy is that we really don't know a whole lot about his thinking. He did mention some things during the campaign. Sometimes he kind of contradicted himself, but it was, for the most part, a focus on domestic issues here. Now we have him coming to the White House in a very dangerous world. What, on your mind, should he be thinking about most right now?
Well, what I'm concerned about, and where I'll get some better information, will be when we find out who he appoints to the cabinet and who he's talking to. And already we have some hints. Unfortunately, there's been several neoconservatives that are getting closer to Trump, and if he gets their advice from him, then I don't think that's a good sign. During the campaign, he did talk a little bit about backing off and being less confrontational with Russia, and I like that. But he criticized some of the wars on the Middle East. At the same time, he believed we should accelerate, the war against ISIS and terrorism, all without showing me that he has an understanding of exactly what causes terrorism. So I will look for who he appoints and where he's getting his advice. But right now, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But from experience, from previous elections, most of the time we don't get what we hear. Yeah. They don't follow through on their promises. In Trump's case, who knows what he promised? He's been pretty vague on foreign policy.
It's true. That's true. I mean, he had the article in the National Interest, if I'm not mistaken, and it was very realist in outlook, but it had some what I thought to be some kind of contradictory trends there. One thing I worry about is recent history, because we had Barack Obama, a liberal Democrat, elected, and he ended up being surrounded by some of the most egregious neocons and very adventurous foreign policy. Now, he's made that very clear in a number of ways that that's not what he wants to do. He doesn't want to pursue stupid wars. Is it going to be that difficult to reach out into the foreign policy establishment where he's going to be able to get some new thinking? Because a lot of Republicans turned their back on him in the foreign policy sphere during the campaign.
You talk about contradictions. With Obama, he ended up with the Nobel Prize for Peace. Yeah. So that is enough to confuse us. But we look at the president, we look at what he said, we look at what he might do, we look at his advisors. But quite frankly, there's an outside source, which we refer to as a deep state or a shadow government. There's a lot of influence by people that are actually more powerful than our government itself, our president, and all. No. I mean, you take, for instance, how our government gets involved in elections around the world. Yep. Whether it's in the Middle East or Ukraine, we've been very much involved, and we've done this for more than 50 years. And so that isn't known to the public. Matter of fact, all we do is see the downside decades later where there may be some blowback. So we can't know exactly that. So yes, Trump is his own guy more so than most of have ever been in before. Yeah. We hope he can maintain an independence and then go in the right direction. But I fear the fact that there's so much that can be done secretly, out of control of our parent government and out of the view of so many citizens.